I'm just not feeling it. Don't swear. Just not feeling it today. This is really, really hard work. I don't know what's wrong with me. I hope you appreciate these videos, because tell you what, doing one video a week is starting to take its toll. I'm not sure I can maintain it for that much longer, because, oh, bleeding heart, poor Jim. I earn less money because it takes me a long time to film stuff, and I can't just get my head down and do the jobs, and it's starting to become a bit of a pain in the arse. Anyway, come on Jim, enthusiastic. I am actually enthusiastic to get this finished. To be fair, it's been hanging around, so the last video you saw of it, I should probably watch the end of that video. I think I just got to a point where the gearbox clusters were in the crankcases, and I showed you the wear on the gear. Let's address that first. Oh my fucking god, you can't fucking make it up. I haven't even got my leaky airline plugged in. Fuck me. Fucking hell. I'm not doing another take. Let's address the reason why I think the gearbox failed, why there was wear on those gears, because that's something that came up in the comments a bit. It's like, well, that's great Jim, the gearbox is broken, not the F word did, and that's great, but why? And a few people said, oh, lack of lubrication was the thing that came up. The spray bar was blocked. Well, to start with, they don't have a spray bar. I'll show you perhaps as it goes together, but they have an oil feed to the center of the shaft. The shaft is hollow, and pressurized oil fills the shaft up, and it comes out of holes in the shaft. It's definitely not lack of lubrication. You do occasionally see lack of lubrication in a gearbox like this. It's quite rare. It's usually when somebody's had the crankcase halves apart and they've blocked some of the oil galleries up with silicone. You know, the orange silicone that you see, or not necessarily orange, but people, I don't know, something about whenever an engine oil gallery is blocked up with silicone, it's usually orange for some reason. I don't know why that is. Not lack of lubrication. Definitely not. You'll see bluing on bearings and stuff when it's not that. I think, and I could probably test the hardness of the gear somehow. I have got some files somewhere, and yeah, Rockwell, whatever. I think it's just a manufacturing fault. That's my gut feeling. The rest of the gearbox is in really, really nice condition. There's no really any other signs of wear at all, which is, for something this age, is remarkable, really. So that said, since you last, I'll show you what's on the bench here in a second. Since you last saw me, I've cleaned absolutely everything. Everything is squeaky clean and laid out ready for assembly. This upper part of the engine, this crankcase is all washed off. Needs a little bit of titivation with brake cleaner here and there. The lower crankcase is washed off. The gears were taken apart so I could inspect them. Fucking, I feel like I'm waffling. The gear clusters were taken apart, laid out, washed, inspected carefully. All I need to repair it are the two gears and all the circlips off the shaft. I'll show you them going together as they go together. There's some do's and don'ts when you're putting gearbox clusters together. They all vary slightly, but yeah, there's some ways around the circlips have got to go, and some bushes have got to go on in a certain way. I'll show you that. Yeah, so everything's laid out clean. What did I want to say? This is just how I do it, and please yourself, but I like to get super organized, so it's effectively just Meccano when it goes together. I've got some standby. Sound like a salesman, but I went on the service database that we've got for the Discord and found the GSX-R manual and downloaded the relevant pages of the manual. So one of the pages. One of the things Suzuki do, I'll flash it on the screen for you, but they do an awesome, I think it's only Suzuki. You only seem to see this in Suzuki workshop manuals, but they do this awful, the opposite of that, awesome exploded diagram of the gearbox, and it shows you all the position of all the bearings and where all the different circlips should be. That's really, really handy. And then I just pull, don't assume you know, you can, I think when you get experience doing this stuff, you're almost more likely to fuck up because you're a little bit more blasé about it and you're not sort of questioning every little thing. So I like to check myself, and it's worth spending, which I've just done, 20 minutes with a brew, just going through the workshop manual, just reminding yourself of when the crankcase halves go together, where all the O-rings are, how many dowels there are. Some of them have little oil pressure reducing noggins that push in the crankcase. This has actually got one somewhere. I think it's in the other crankcase half, but it's screwed in, it can't come out. Just remind yourself of where everything goes. And then I also download and print off. I mean, you could look at it on a PC or a tablet. I like to have a physical piece of paper. I like to have the torque settings just to hand. You know what I'm saying? Just get all your ducks in a row. Spend 20 minutes just reading through the workshop manual, refresh yourself of all the bits, print out the pages with the torque settings on. I get everything clean, got all the bits laid out, so it's literally just Meccano, and I've got everything to hand, got all the tools, got my torque wrench. You can just do it in one sitting. I've got a question. So we've talked, I know we have before, we've talked about different sealers, right? So I use, these are the only two sealers I have in my toolbox. I use 1207B, which is the black one, which you can buy that. I don't buy it under a Suzuki part number, but you can get it on a Suzuki part number. And I use the 1215, which is the grey one. The black one, I've talked about this before, I know, dries a lot quicker than this grey stuff. Anyway, I was reading through, I hadn't noticed it before. I'll flash it on the screen. Okay, here it is. So it talks about the sealer, putting the sealer on the crankcase, right? I'll take a screenshot of this and put it on the screen for you, right? So it says apply Suzuki bond to the mating surface of the lower crankcase, yeah. But then it says 1207B for USA and 1215 for the others. What? Why? What? Does it? I don't know. Maybe American mechanics are faster and they can get the crankcase halves together quickly using the 1207B. I prefer to use the 1215, the grey stuff. It's the skin over time is a lot longer, so it stays tacky. So if you ever in a position where, and you shouldn't be, but sometimes you are like, oh fuck, I need to just lift those crankcases a little bit, and I don't know, you put the gasket sealer on, and then somebody comes in the workshop and talks to you, and you like, fucking leave me alone, I'm trying to get this done, and you lose a couple of minutes, that black stuff goes off so quickly, you're wondering whether or not it's losing some of its efficiency in terms of sealing. Fucking hell, I'm waffling. Anyway, yeah, I thought that was weird, and I hadn't noticed that before. I've read through this workshop manual a lot in the past. I've done a few of these engines now, and yeah, thought that was a bit weird. Why one gasket sealer for one country and one for the other? The engines are exactly the same. Anyway, fucking hell, wafflage. So, I'll show you on, I'll put some video on the screen now, but the gearbox clusters are together without any of the circlips on. When I stripped them and put them on the bench and sort of measured and looked and decided exactly what I wanted to order, I then sort of reassembled them back onto the shafts just to keep them in one piece. So we need to pull those apart now. They're washed down anyway, and start reassembling with the new gears and yeah, and the new circlips. The other thing I wanted to say as well was one of the gears, they're all on here with the parts. So one of them was in stock with Fowler's, no problem, got that. The other one was fucking discontinued. I was like, oh really? But anyway, I gave the customer the part number and said, can you do the leg work, because I haven't really got the time, and he came up trumps and he found one. It came from abroad somewhere, but anyway, we got the gears we needed, but one of them was discontinued. Right, let's get these clusters. Stop fucking talking. Let's get these clusters apart and build a gearbox. Right, onwards. Just a real quick look at what parts I've got. So gaskets for the starter cover, clutch cover gasket, sump gasket, the 2 gears, which you've already seen, load of these little doughty washers, these little rubber washers, O-rings for the oil galleries, where the crankcase halves go together, gear selector shaft oil seal. What else we got? Oh, the dreaded clutch push rod seal, output shaft seal, the one behind the front sprocket, another washer, O-ring for the what's in there? Oh, O-ring for the oil pickup, circlips for the gearbox, and that is about it. I'm not. Where are the gears? Okay, we're going to pull these clusters apart now and do a little bit more cleaning perhaps and assemble. I did mention, I think in part 1, didn't I, about doing this output shaft bearing. It's really expensive and it's got to come apart more. I've got to press the bearing off. I'm not gaining anything by replacing that bearing, and I spoke about it, didn't I, in part 1. Lines have got to be drawn. I've got this apart because I'm fixing a Whining top gear. It's not a, you know, it's not an engine rebuild or a restoration. Same goes for this crankcase. I haven't removed the forks or the selector drum. It's all working perfectly. Obviously it's all been washed off. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to keep the labour to a sensible minimum and also try and keep the parts bill as low as is practical. Is that a way of saying it? Right, let's get these apart, these clusters. Okay, so it's as stripped as it's going to be. Right, a few little top tips, if you like, on assembling gearboxes. Most of these top tips will apply to any type of gearbox like this. First thing to say, so I've got my little diagram here. Thank you, Suzuki, very helpful. All the spacers and shims and circlips that you can likely get in the wrong place are called out on this little diagram so you can double check yourself. First thing to say, the circlips, never ever ever reuse a circlip on a gearbox shaft. If you've taken the circlip off the shaft, you have to replace it with a new one. Trust me, just use new circlips. The circlip is also handed as well. There's to the untrained eye, if you looked at the circlip, they would look identical, but there's a little bit of a chamfer on the inside edge on one of them and it's much flatter on the other. There is a right and a wrong way for them to go on the shaft. I'll flash on the screen the page out of the workshop manual which will make more sense, but the thrust side, so the gear pressing against the circlip, I'll put you the diagram on the screen, it will make sense. And then the other thing that you really need to pay attention to is these bushes. You know, I said the gearbox was oiled from the inside, so I need to show you on the crankcase really, maybe flash some on the screen, but there's an oil gallery, a cutting in the crankcase, basically feeds oil into the gearbox shaft. Don't want to get too into it, but the shaft is hollow, okay, and it's pressure fed with oil, and see these little holes in the shaft? Well, the bushes also have holes, so when you slide these bushes on, you must make sure that you could very easily, if I can get it to line up like that, the hole lines up with, you know what I'm saying, so the oil can pass through into the bearing you could easily get it in the wrong place. It's not keyed in any way, and block the oil hole off. Obviously that would be bad, so don't do that. Yeah, so those are the top tips. The circlip and get the bearings in the right place. I'm going to assemble these gearbox clusters now with the new circlips, and then we can start laying it out in the crankcase, and we can talk about getting the crankcase halves together. Right, onwards. Right, it's going together. Another little top tip for you. So I'm following this diagram, assembling it, making sure I've got all my spacers and everything in the correct position. So where am I up to? Yeah, so that double gear and then the circlip. What am I trying to tell you? Gonna sneeze. Stand by. Oh, I do apologise. With this shaft, is this a top tip? I don't know whether it is. There's a circlip on the end, the last one to go on, which is different to all the others. This gear is kind of in the way, get it the right way around. There's kind of a, I'll get you a close up. There's kind of a, what's the word? I'm blanking on it. The gear is in the way of itself to get this circlip on. What you do is, this circlip I've put on past its groove that it sits in, which means I can build everything up and it all drop down onto the shaft a little bit further than it ordinarily would, which means I can get this circlip into this groove and then I can slide everything back into place. Does that make sense? I think it does. Right, onwards. The most awkward fucking thing in the world, this circlip. Gotta feed it on slowly. It doesn't have any holes in itself, you know, for circlip pliers. You just gotta sort of feed it on the shaft like that. Thank you. Haha. So, get your close up. So that would be impossible to get on if that gear was all the way back there. Does that make sense? And now what I can do is I can slide all this back up into the position it should be and use this gear to push that circlip up until it snaps down into its groove. Know what I'm saying? And there's a little oil seal there and a bearing. Which way round? Oil seal first, that away. And then the bearing, which isn't handed. Okay, right, gearbox assemblage. Final little wipey wipe with a bit of brake cleaner. Top tip, not really a top tip, but cleaning gasket surfaces. I've spent over the years God knows how much money on posh gasket scrapers and this, that and the other. There's no substitute really for, we call these Stanley knife blades in the UK, not sure what you'd call them in your country, but box cutter maybe, something like that. So a slightly dull, not brand new blade. Just go over the gasket surfaces and knock off any high spots. You don't need to get super anal about, oh, there's a bit of a stain on the aluminium. You know, you could get at it with a little bit of fine Scotch-Brite if you really wanted to. But yeah, for gasket cleaning, can't beat a blade like that. So this is all super flat. All the little bits of sealer that get left behind, you can get with the end of the knife. You know what I'm saying? Nice flat, clean gasket surface. So because I've studied the workshop manual, I know that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 O-rings and 3 dowels. There's a dowel there, and then the other 2 are over here on the bench. That hole there and that hole there. Okay, so that's my dowels. I'm going to have a bit of a trial run with this gearbox just because it's been apart. So we've got a little clip here and a little clip here. Well, it's not a clip, is it? It's a little half moon locating jobby. I'm going to lay the gearbox in and I'm just going to drop the other crankcase half over the top. No sealer or anything. I'm not going to fit these O-rings, and I can just go through the gearbox and make sure it all appears to be okay. It's only an extra 10 minutes work, less than that. Then I won't bolt it down, I'll just rest it together, then I'll pull it off, and then we can do the final assembly with a gasket sealer and torque it down with the new O-rings in position. Right, so let's do that. And the other thing worthy of noting is I'm not going to fit that oil seal yet either. A little dowel pin to line up there, that's it, and then that little noggin, is that forward or back? Look at the crankcase. It is... Why can't I see it on there? That's weird. Oh, that's because it's on there, Jim. That way. Okay. And the other one, like that. Make sure that is all the way down. Now another thing, I've mentioned this before, I know. When you are putting crankcase halves together, doesn't matter what it is, what kind of engine, it could be a little single cylinder 2-stroke and they're vertical, not horizontal like this. Never ever ever pull the cases together using the pressure of the bolts. They should always just rest together. You might have to do a little bit of tappy with a soft face hammer to get the crankcase halves to come together, but you should never be pulling them together with the bolts. You're asking for trouble if you do that. Now then, the other thing I haven't done is this is all washed off and clean. I need to replace that oil seal, put that gear change mechanism shaft back in, then I can just drop this on. So you have it in neutral, and these, you know what I'm saying. I just rest this together. We can go through the gears, make sure the gears are there. It all appears to be working all right before we put our gasket sealer on it and bolt it together. Right, let me change this oil seal and get that shaft back in, and then we'll rest it on and see if we've got a gearbox that works. Okay, new oil seal. I've got a really expensive puller for this, which you have to use. Screwdriver. Cleanage. Literally a little bit of rubber grease on that and just fucking push it in with your fingers. It's that complicated. It's held in, there's a washer and on the shaft. Once the shaft slides through, there's I think you saw it, didn't you? There's a washer and a circlip that goes on that holds it in position, or stops it coming out rather. Right, okay, some grease. Oh, there's a thing. Can you see that? The new seal has got grease in it. Fair play. Okay, greasy. Tappy. And then the other real special tool, the universal seal driver, otherwise known as a 14mm socket. There we go. Fucking hell, like I bought one. Right, you're gonna see from that side. Is that in shot? Sort of. So then this jobby what's-it has a little shim on it. Okay, and then it slides down through there. No, it doesn't. It slides down through there. Like that. It's not the best camera angle, is it? And it's probably out of focus. Anyway, You get the idea. And then on this side here, there's a washer and a circlip. And then we'll drop this crankcase over the top of those gears without any sealer or anything. And just make sure that we've got gears before we start covering everything in sealer. There's no reason why we shouldn't have, but anybody that's ever put one together, covered everything in gasket goo, got the crankcase halves together and then discovered a problem, will understand what I'm talking about. You know, you're right in the way. That camera is a bit of a pain. Oh, come on now, Jim. We're just tappy. Right, okay. So, theoretically, we get this in neutral, like that. This should just drop on. Line the forks up. It's also, if you're not like super familiar with doing them, which actually I'm not, you know, it's not an everyday occurrence, it doesn't hurt to have a bit of a practice run. Do you know what I mean? Like that. Where's me knocking stick? Tappy. Like that. They should just go together, just nice and snug without any beating. Do you know what I mean? It's especially true. We talked, didn't we, about this having a 3-piece crankcase in part 1, so you're not disturbing bearing shells or anything like that. But if it was a normal crankcase that's just split in 2, you've got bearing shells to contend with as it's going together. So it's even more important to not be fucking beating on it and pulling it together with bolts. In this instance, we haven't got to deal with the bearing shells as we've discussed. Okay, so we're actually in gear there. Let me get my vice grips and put them on this shaft, and then we can go through the gearbox. Vice grips. What are you, an animal? I am going to put a bit of microfiber around it though. Oh, look out, my daughter's home. So we've got to find neutral. Yeah, was I one gear? No, that's not neutral. A bit tighter so it doesn't slip on the spline. There we go. So that's neutral. That's first. Back to neutral. Second. Third. Fourth. Fifth. How many gears has this thing got? 6? 6. Okay, so they're all there. Don't expect it to shift, you know, super slickly. Everything's a little bit dry. And obviously you're not moving, are you? So, back to neutral. The other thing, I'm sure I've mentioned this at some point, Kawasaki's have this weird mechanism where they have little ball bearings that sit in a groove on the shaft, and unless the shaft's spinning and the centrifugal force is making the ball bearings, they're not spring loaded, they just flop around in a little void in the shaft. And at any position, at least one of the ball bearings has dropped down with gravity into a little groove. Unless the shaft is spinning and the centrifugal force is firing the ball bearings out, you can't get past first gear, which can be a little bit confusing if you weren't aware of that mechanism. So in this instance, you'd be able to get first, but then you'd be like, why is it stuck? It won't go into second gear. So yeah, a few people have been confused by that. Anyway, all the gears are there, which is bloody marvellous. So we can take it apart again. We can have a final wipe down, he says, if I can get it apart. We can have a final wipe down, and then we can put some sealer on it and assemble it properly. Awesome. The other thing I just thought of while I was wiping this crankcase down is, I just wanted to show you this little oil feed for the gearbox. So this is the main oil gallery along here, which is oil pump, out of the oil pump into this main gallery, feeds up to the crank bearings, etc. Anyway, this casting off, coming off here, there's a little pressure reducing hole restriction thing screwed into the crankcase there. See this channel? This is the feed for the gearbox bearings. So it feeds in to that bearing and it feeds along here and feeds in through the end of the shaft. And then the oil comes out of the holes in the shaft, and the same for this one all the way down around this bearing. And you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what that is. Very easy if you didn't know what you were doing to block that up with sealer, which could be a big problem. And you'll notice when you look in the workshop manual that there is that's going to be blown out, isn't it? Or maybe not. There's a very specific area you're supposed to put the sealer on to avoid those oil passageways. Anyway, stop talking and do work, Jim. I'm going to wipe this down a bit more. What else did I want to say? Oil seal for that shaft. Okay, it doesn't call for it. I know I've talked about this in the past also. This seal here and the clutch pushrod seal, which is somewhere around here. This thing. I put a little bit of sealer around where the seal sits. It doesn't call for that in the workshop manual, but I don't know, seems like belt and braces to me. So I'm going to get this seal on the gearbox shaft, get this one in position, put my sealer on this side, drop it on, torque it down. I've got everything's laid out here ready to go. All part of the prep, isn't it? I've got new copper washers for the crankcase bolts, and I think I said, didn't I? I've got the new Doughty washers for the... Yeah, okay, right, work. Okay, so I'm using the 1215, the grey stuff. A little bit of a smidge there where that seal's going to sit. I think that's a bit more of a smidge than it actually needs, Jim Bob, and the same for where that clutch pushrod seal is going to sit. I think I'm probably being a little bit OCD, to be honest. But I've never had one leak, so I'm sticking to it. Okay, let's drop you in there. Get that in the right place, that little dowly thing. Okay. And then, what did I do with that clutch pushrod seal? The dreaded clutch pushrod seal. Remember that Hayabusa we did? I had to take the engine out and strip it just because this seal was buggered. So if ever you're stripping one of these, always replace the seals, because there's a hell of a lot of work to get back in there and change it if it needs it, and you were there previously. Right. What was I going to say then? I was going to say that these little O-rings, so these are the oil passageways from that main gallery in the upper crankcase down to the main bearing journals. The most critical bloody oil seal O-ring in the whole engine. What I like to do is, I've talked about this stuff, this high vacuum grease. I use this for holding things in place. I use it on float ball gaskets. It's like super tacky grease. So what I do is I put a little bit on those just to hold them in place. I'm sure it's going to be fine and they're not going to move, but if one of those, you know, I'm wiggling the crankcases together and one of those just moves out of position, that right there is a blown up engine. So I just feel a bit more confident. Again, I'm being anal probably, but if it works, is it a bad idea? And then we'll put the gasket sealer on the other crankcase half, and then we'll drop it together. Righto. Sealers on the other crankcase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 O-rings in position. Got the 3 dowels. That's there, that's there. They're all down. Okay. Sticky crankcase. What's going to happen, guys, is I'm going to struggle now getting this one together. Oh God. Oh God, what's happening? Oh, I see what's happening. Last time I was doing it, I wasn't actually in neutral, and that selector fork was being held in the correct place. This is why actually having a dry run is quite useful. It will be absolute sod's law that it won't go together as easy the second time. Come on now. What I'm trying to avoid doing is, what I don't want to do is drop the crankcase down onto those O-rings and then lift it back off again. Do you see what I mean? I want it to go down. Sorry, I've got my head in the shot. I want it to go down in one movement. Partly to preserve the gasket goo, and partly to make sure that those O-rings don't move out of position. Ow! Holy smokage. Okay, I can peer through there and I can see all the O-rings are in position. Drop that down on there. Like that. Okay, what I'm going to do is just going to put the 6mm bolts in, just nip them, then I'm going to flip it over and start torquing from the other side. So the larger diameter bolts, the 8mm bolts, I'm going to torque those first and then come back over and do a final torque on the smaller 6mm stuff, if that makes sense. Okay, so I've got my new little rubber washer jobbies. So just to remind myself, got my little diagram here where the little rubber noggins go. That one, and that one. Yeah, a bit of pre-planning is pretty useful. Having all the bolts laid out clean, ready to go. You've counted to make sure you've got the right number of them, etc. Just makes the assembly so much easier. You can tell which ones the internal ones are because the heads are all nice and shiny. I'm just nipping them up, just so that gasket goo is compressed. Not in any particular order at this point, just touching them down. And then I'll spin it over put the larger ones in, which go in from the other side, and we can torque it down properly, and then I'll flip it back over and torque these. I got my torque specs on my little bit of paper down there, and then we'll do, I think we'll probably do the clutch then, and water pump. We'll figure it out, and we won't put the sump on. Same reason for taking it off before we took the engine out of the bike. It gives us a nice little flat platform to put the engine on to lift back up into the frame. Before I go any further, just nipping these ever so slightly, I'm just going to do this gearbox again, make sure all the gears are there, just to be safe. Okay, it would appear that all the gears are present and correct. Okay, cool. Flip it over. And put the bolts in the top. Where's me rat shit gone? So first pass on these, 10.8 foot-pound. Second pass, got me bit of paper here, 19 foot-pound. So not massively tight. And then we'll flip it back and do the 6 mils. First pass was on the 6 mils on the other side, 4.5 foot-pound, which is basically what I've done with a T-bar, just nipping them. And then fully tight is 8 foot-pound, which is fucking hell, it's not very tight, is it? 8 foot-pound. Okay. And then, God, I love this torque wrench. Is it 18 or 19? Can't remember. 19, there we go. Okay. Why don't you just go and get a proper Allen key socket, Jim, out the toolbox. Try and do it in one continuous movement. We've talked about that, haven't we? Stiction on the bolt, etc. Right, okay. Flip it back and do the 6 mils on the other side. Okay. What was it? 8? Did we say 8? That's what we said. Okay. Right, okay, pickups bolted in, got the little clip for that wire there. This came out. Did I say? Can't remember, I might have said. Somebody was asking me why I'd taken this cover off because the crankcase splits from there. Yeah, this was leaking. I don't know whether you noticed when I was taking the engine out, but it was all wet with oil around there. I think it was maybe this rubber bit. So I've undone that clip, pulled the wire out. Fucking hell, I really need a new airline. Two ugga-duggers. Yeah, I pulled all that out just so I could I've just put some of that black 1207B on that, pushed that in, Done the little clip up there, pickups bolted back in. Where's the rest of it? 2 new gaskets. Sorry, I'm not in shot, am I? Got 2 new gaskets. Got some parts here. We're going to need 2 dowels. One for there, one for there. The jobby, what's it? The little gear with a washer. Go on there like that. With a wavy washer on the outside. Gasket. Got a little bit of that 1207 on the join there and there, because they do leak. This stuff is awful. It's like ink almost. You find you touch it and then it spreads around everywhere. Okay. And then this cover. Like that. Pipe's in the way a bit. And then we've got a clip and a doughty washer. That's the old washer. Let's get a new one. Washer in that one. Clip on that one. We should have 2 washers and a wave washer. Yes, we have, and there's a little needle roller in there. We need the shaft with a washer and a needle roller. Yeah, that goes on there like that. Another washer. That doesn't seem quite right. Why is that? Yeah, that's it. Wave washer. Couple of dowels. Gasket. Where's the gasket? There's the gasket. Like that. Nice clean cover. Marvellous. And then should have one more doughty washer. Yes, there it is. Which goes in that one. And then a short one, which is, I don't remember, that one. Long one, sorry, long one, and then extra long one. Okay. Starter motor might as well go on now as well. Grease up the O-ring. Okay. Line it up. Marvellous. 2 bolts. Pushed it too far in. Right, clutch next, then the water pump, and then we're done, apart from one horrible thing. Do you know what it is? And it needs addressing before the engine goes in. Right, okay guys, so clutch assemblage, bevel washer first, got this drive gear for the oil pump on the back of the clutch basket. Hopefully that crankshaft is in the right place to enable this to go in. Thank you. Rest it on there like that. Got a bush. And then I've got this in a tub of oil, this needle roller. That needle roller in there. Like that. Fucking leaking oil everywhere. Got another washer. Like that. Clutch centre. Now, I have a confession to make. I've dropped a bit of a boo-boo. It's not really a boo-boo, but technically speaking, you should use a new nut because you peen the nut over into the spline to stop it coming undone. Ah, stupid trousers, didn't order a new nut. That has an outside, but it's fine. It's not going to hurt it at all. I can just peen it over in a different place. It's just nice to use a new nut, but it really isn't necessary. Just put that on there loosely to start with, and let's load this clutch pack back in. No, I haven't soaked these plates in oil, guys. They're the old plates, and they're already impregnated. Is that the right word? Yes, fine. Right, load this in. The reason I'm loading this in before I've done this nut up, you know the answer, right? It's so I can do this nut up with my Ugga Dugga without having a holding tool. You're the sort of person that thinks I should be using a torque wrench to do that nut up. Yeah, maybe this channel isn't for you. I'm definitely not a bodger, but there's a time and a place for a torque wrench. This isn't one of them. Excuse me in the way. Three Ugga Duggas on there. Oh my fucking days. I can't moan this time, can I? I was actually using the airline. Turn that off. Shut up. Okay. So, you can see, I'll go the opposite side to where it was peened before. Bit of a blunt chisel. Tappy tappy. Like that. That'll do, donkey. That'll do. Okay. Nice and free still. Ah! Back in the right place. Right. We need... Well, I've got these two rods. One goes in from t'other side, but I don't need to worry about that. That'll go in from the other side. So that goes in. Like that. And then somewhere around here, yeah, we've got this little clutch pushy jobby with thrust bearing. like that. We've got a clutch outer. Where have I put it? We got that, which some of them have a punch mark and they line up in a specific place. Not the case with these. Springs. Bolts. Doing this left-handed so I'm not in the shot. So that's that. We'll put the clutch cover on it with a new gasket, a little bit of sealer here and here where the crankcase join is, a couple of dowels. What do we need? A 10mm T-bar. I got one out. If I come from this angle, I can do it. How tight, you say? Not tight at all. I don't know what the spec's going to be, but it's going to be like those other bolts, like 8 foot-pound, basically just nipped. Just a bit of a nip, like You have to make the noise too. It's the only way you know you got the right torque. Like that. Okay, gasket. That's the sump gasket. That's probably not going to fit. Okay. And also, okay, gasket. Cover. Bolts. Where are the dowels? Over there in the cover, look. Okay. How organised of me. Okay, that's that. Now what we want to do is, let's get rid of that a second. A tiny weeny bit where the crankcase join is. You think, what's the fucking point in that, Jim? It's not going to leak. They bloody do, you know. Over time you get a tiny little weep of oil. Not always, but sometimes. Okay. What the fuck? Don't tell me I've got the wrong gasket. Help me. What the fuck is happening? What the hell? Are you fucking having a giraffe? Is that me being stupid? Yes, it is. Okay. Thank you. Right, nice clean cover. Clips in the way a little bit. Seriously, get out of the way. Which one? I'm sure there's a doughty washer. I've got one spare here, which must be for one of these clutch bolts. This one of the two. No, I've got two spare. I've got two bolts with. I don't remember which ones they're supposed to be. I'm going to have to look in the workshop manual for that. In fact, let's just look inside and we'll be able to tell, won't we? Which bolts? I've got a that one and that one, those two, because they're open to the crankcase. that one. Oh, that's in the way, that's really annoying. Where's the Allen key? A schoolboy error, wasn't it? That one. And that one. Right. Okay. Spin it over. Undo the water pump. Okay. A little bit of grease on there. Where's my clutch push rod? Let's put that in there while we're here, without folding that seal over on itself. There we go. Which way? That way. And turn the oil pump, the water pump rather, so it engages. Alright then, I think this could be the end of the video. What did I do with that other bolt? There was two of them. Now there's only one. What have you done with it? Oh, for fuck's sake, where is it? It's getting late and I'm getting tired. I'm going to call it quits. And then tomorrow I'm going to have a monumental fight. Oh, there's that bolt. With, stand by, I'll move the camera and I'll show you. Did I say there's something I need to do before I can put the engine in? Let me move the camera. Remember this fucking thing from part 1? Snapped exhaust stud. It's properly in there. I got this melty hot to a point where, you know, the engine is bolted into the frame. You could almost not touch the sides of the frame. I got the head so hot, and it was obviously the frame was sucking the heat out the cylinder head. And I managed to get a lot of torque on it. It was absolutely hanging off the ratchet. So it snapped the stud and didn't even attempt to budge. So I'm not quite sure I'm going to skin this. I think initially what I'll try, now the engine's not in the frame, and there's a good bit of stud showing, I think I'll drop a nut over the top of it, get at it with a TIG welder and weld it in. Get it really hot with a map gas torch and see if I can break it free. Failing that, I'm gonna have to drill it out. Got to be super careful I don't damage the cylinder head. Obviously it might almost be worth just drilling it straight away, cutting it flat, because I got such good access now it's not in the frame. I don't know, I'll come up with a plan. That's the end of this one. I'm going to lie down in a dark room. Hope you enjoyed it. A few top tips in there. Slightly, mildly entertaining. Like and subscribe if you can, guys. And remember about the Discord. I bang on about it all the time. Fantastic group of people. Links in the description. Go and join in the fun. Over there, access to thousands of free workshop manuals and service information and stuff. Anyway, I'm gonna go and have a sleep. Thanks, guys. See you soon.